Right now, in this very moment, two versions of your future are taking shape. In one version, you're standing exactly where you are today. Same habits, same excuses, same quiet frustration that whispers late at night when no one else is listening. You're stuck in a loop, making deals with yourself that you never keep. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes never. In the other version, something shifts. Not overnight, not through some magic trick or motivational speech that fades by morning, but through something deeper, something most people never discover because they're too busy negotiating with their own potential. You see, discipline isn't what you think it is. It's not about punishing yourself or white-knuckling through life. It's not about becoming a robot or losing your humanity. It's about building a system so powerful that your future self thanks you every single day for the choices you're making right now. Think about the last time you promised yourself you'd start. Maybe it was a goal, a dream, a version of yourself you wanted to become. What happened? Did you start strong and fade? Did you never start at all? Did you make a deal with laziness, telling yourself you'd begin on Monday, after the holidays, when things calm down? Here's the truth most people never hear. Discipline is the difference between who you are and who you're capable of becoming. It's the invisible bridge between dreaming and doing. And every single day you wait, that bridge gets longer, harder to cross, until one day you look back and realize you spent years standing at the edge thinking about it. But not anymore. Not after this, because you're about to learn a protocol, a system, a way of operating that eliminates the negotiations, kills the hesitation, and builds a version of you that doesn't need to feel ready. You just act. This isn't theory. This isn't philosophy. This is the operating system for people who refuse to let another year slip by, for people who are done making promises they don't keep, for people who understand that the life they want is built one disciplined decision at a time. So, take a breath. Decide right now that this time is different, not because you feel motivated, but because you're about to discover something that changes everything. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. The Zero Negotiation Rule. Stop making deals with laziness. Every morning, you wake up and enter a courtroom. You don't see the judge's bench or the wooden panels, but it's there, in your mind. And the moment your alarm goes off, the negotiations begin. Just 10 more minutes. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. I'll do it later, when I feel more ready. These aren't harmless thoughts. They're deals you're making with the weakest version of yourself. And every single time you negotiate, you lose. Not because you're weak, but because you're playing a game where discipline never wins. Here's what most people don't understand. Discipline doesn't live in the space of debate. It doesn't thrive in conversations about whether you should or shouldn't. The moment you start negotiating with yourself about doing what needs to be done, you've already lost half the battle. Because negotiation creates a door, and behind that door is every excuse you've ever used. Think about the last time you had something important to do. Maybe it was working out, studying, making that difficult phone call, starting that project. Your brain immediately started building a case against action. Too tired, too busy, not the right time. And if you're honest, that case felt convincing. It always does, because your brain's number one job isn't to make you successful, it's to keep you comfortable, safe, in the zone of least resistance. This is where the zero negotiation rule changes everything. It's simple, brutal, and it works. When the moment arrives to do what you committed to doing, you don't think, you don't debate, you don't negotiate, you act immediately, without pause, without discussion. Imagine a soldier on the battlefield. When the order comes, there's no negotiation, no internal debate about whether it's convenient or comfortable. There's action. Why? Because negotiation in that moment could cost everything. Your discipline works the same way. The moment you open the negotiation table, you've invited your laziness to sit across from you with a briefcase full of excuses. Let's make this real. Tomorrow morning, your alarm goes off. You committed to waking up early, to getting ahead, to doing something different. In that moment, your brain will start talking. It will sound reasonable, logical even. Just one more hour. You need rest. You can start next week when things calm down. This is the negotiation. And if you listen, if you engage, if you debate, you lose. The zero negotiation rule says this: the decision was already made. Last night, when you set that alarm. Last week, when you made that commitment. Last month, when you decided things would be different. The morning isn't the time to reconsider. It's the time to execute. No discussion, no debate, just action. This applies to everything: working out, studying, eating healthy, showing up. The decision happens once, in advance, when you're head clear and strong. Then, when the moment arrives, you honor that decision. No matter what your brain says, no matter how you feel, because feelings are temporary, but patterns are permanent. Here's the shift. Most people make decisions over and over again. Every morning, they decide whether to work out. Every afternoon, they decide whether to focus. Every evening, they decide whether to follow through. That's exhausting. That's why discipline feels so hard. You're using all your energy deciding instead of doing. The zero negotiation rule eliminates decision fatigue. You decide once, then you follow through every single time without reopening the case. It's not about motivation. It's about commitment. It's about respecting the version of yourself that made the plan when your head was clear. Think about the people you admire, the ones who seem unstoppable. They're not superhuman. They're not more talented. They simply don't negotiate with laziness. When it's time to work, they work. When it's time to train, they train. When it's time to focus, they focus. There's no internal dialogue, no debate, just execution. This is your new operating system, starting today. When the moment comes to act on your commitments, you don't think, you don't feel, you don't negotiate, you just move. Fast, without hesitation, because you already decided, and you honor your decisions like they're written in stone. The life you want isn't on the other side of motivation. It's on the other side of this rule. Stop making deals with the part of you that wants to stay small. Stop negotiating with laziness like it has a valid argument. It doesn't. It never did. You know what needs to be done. You know who you want to become. The only question is whether you'll negotiate your way out of it or act your way into it. The courtroom is closed. The negotiation is over. Now it's time to execute.
Chapter 2. The velocity of action. Build discipline through fast micro-moves. There's a physics principle most people never connect to their lives. An object in motion stays in motion. An object at rest stays at rest. Simple, obvious, and completely ignored by everyone who's ever said they'll start tomorrow. Here's what nobody tells you about discipline. It's not built through massive, heroic efforts. It's built through speed, through moving so fast that resistance doesn't have time to form, through acting before your brain can build a case against you. Think about the last time you hesitated. Maybe it was sending that email, making that call, starting that workout. The longer you waited, the harder it became. Not because the task got bigger, but because your mind had time to build walls around it, to imagine all the ways it could go wrong, to convince you that waiting was safer than acting. This is where velocity changes everything. Velocity is the speed at which you move from thought to action. And most people operate at the wrong speed. They think, they plan, they consider, they wait for the perfect moment, and by the time they're ready to act, the opportunity is gone. The motivation has faded. The momentum has died. Discipline doesn't live in the big moments. It lives in the micro moves, the tiny actions you take within seconds of thinking about them.
These aren't the goals you write down at New Year's. These are the immediate, small decisions that happen 100 times a day. And the speed at which you execute them determines everything. Imagine this. You're sitting on your couch. You think about working out. In that moment, you have about 5 seconds before your brain starts negotiating. 5 seconds before comfort whispers its case. 5 seconds before you talk yourself out of it. If you move within those 5 seconds, you win. If you hesitate, you lose. Not because you're weak, but because you gave resistance time to organize. This is the velocity of action. It's the practice of collapsing the gap between intention and execution. Most people live in that gap. They intend to do great things. They plan to change. They want to be disciplined, but they never close the space between wanting and doing. They live in the slow lane, where every action is preceded by analysis, debate, and hesitation. Fast people win, not because they're smarter or more talented, but because they move before resistance can form. They think about calling someone, they call. They think about writing, they write. They think about starting, they start. There's no gap, no delay, no space for excuses to crawl in and make themselves comfortable. Let's make this practical. Right now, think about something small you've been putting off. Not a massive project, something tiny. Replying to a message, cleaning your desk, doing 10 push-ups. Something that would take less than 5 minutes. Now ask yourself, how long have you been thinking about it? Days? Weeks? Why? Not because it's hard, but because you've been operating at the wrong velocity. Here's the shift. Starting today, you practice speed. When you think about doing something that moves you forward, you do it immediately, within seconds, before your brain can offer commentary, before comfort can make its case, before laziness can open the negotiation table. You move, fast, without thought. This doesn't mean being reckless. It means being decisive. It means understanding that small actions don't need planning committees. They need execution. And the faster you execute, the more momentum you build. Momentum is everything. It's the difference between people who accomplish incredible things and people who have incredible plans that never materialize. Think about a train. Getting it moving from a standstill takes enormous energy. But once it's moving, it becomes unstoppable. You're the same way. The first move is the hardest. But if you make it fast, if you don't give yourself time to overthink it, you'll be amazed at how much easier the second move becomes, and the third, and the 10th. Velocity creates a rhythm, a pattern, a way of operating where action becomes automatic, where you stop being the person who thinks about doing things and become the person who does things. This isn't about motivation. Motivation is slow. It waits for inspiration. It needs the perfect mood. Velocity doesn't wait. It doesn't need conditions. It just moves. Here's what happens when you master this. Your life accelerates, not because you're doing more, but because you're not losing time in the gap. You're not spending hours thinking about the workout instead of working out. You're not spending days drafting the email instead of sending it. You're not spending weeks planning the project instead of starting it. You're collapsing time by eliminating hesitation. The people you admire, the ones who seem to get so much done, they're not managing time better than you. They're moving faster. They're operating at a velocity where resistance can't catch them, where overthinking doesn't have time to set in, where the distance between idea and execution is measured in seconds, not days. This is your training ground. Every small decision today is an opportunity to practice velocity. Every moment you think about doing something productive is a test. Will you move immediately, or will you wait, negotiate, and let that moment pass? The choice happens in an instant, but the pattern you build lasts forever. Start small. Start now. Think about one thing you can do in the next 60 seconds that moves you forward. Not something huge, something tiny. And then move, fast. Before you finish this sentence, before you think about it, before you analyze whether it's the right time, just move. Because discipline isn't built in the moments when you feel ready. It's built in the split seconds when you act before you feel anything at all. That's velocity. That's power. That's how you become unstoppable. The clock is ticking, but you're faster.
Chapter 3. Audit your inner boardroom. Master the thoughts that shape your future. Inside your mind, there's a meeting happening right now. A boardroom filled with voices, each one offering advice, making arguments, casting votes on what you should do next. Some voices are confident, some are anxious, some are sabotaging everything you're trying to build. Most people never realize this meeting is happening. They just hear the noise, the constant stream of thoughts that feel automatic, uncontrollable, like background music they can't turn off. But here's the truth. Those voices aren't neutral. They're not random. They're shaping every decision you make, every action you take, every goal you quit on. If you don't audit your inner boardroom, someone else is running the meeting, and it's probably not the version of you that wants to win. Think about the last time you faced a challenge. Maybe it was a difficult conversation, a new opportunity, a moment where you had to choose between comfort and growth. What did the voices say? Did they encourage you? Did they remind you of your strength? Or did they whisper doubt, fear, and all the reasons you'd probably fail? For most people, the loudest voice in the boardroom isn't the CEO. It's not the strategic thinker with a clear vision. It's the fear-based board member who's been there since childhood, reminding you of every mistake, every rejection, every time things didn't work out. And that voice has been given way too much power. Here's the shift. You need to audit your inner boardroom. You need to identify who's speaking, what they're saying, and whether they deserve a seat at the table. Because not every thought deserves your attention. Not every voice deserves influence. And certainly not every fear deserves a vote. Let's start with awareness. For the next 24 hours, just listen. Pay attention to the running commentary in your mind. What does it say when you look in the mirror? When you think about your goals? When you consider trying something new? Is it supportive? Is it critical? Is it stuck in the past, replaying old failures like they define your future? Most people are shocked when they actually listen. They realize they've been living with a toxic board member for years. Someone who criticizes every move. Someone who catastrophizes every risk. Someone who's constantly comparing them to others and finding them lacking. And they've been taking advice from this voice like it's the truth. It's not the truth. It's just a voice, and you can fire it. Here's how the audit works. You don't fight the negative thoughts. You don't try to suppress them or pretend they're not there. You simply observe them. You name them. You recognize them for what they are. Old patterns, learned responses, protection mechanisms that once served a purpose but now just hold you back. Let's say a thought pops up. You're not good enough to do this. That's not you. That's a board member. Maybe it's the voice of a parent who was overly critical. Maybe it's a teacher who doubted you. Maybe it's a past version of yourself that got hurt and decided safety was better than trying. Whatever it is, it's not the CEO. It's not the person you're becoming. It's just noise from someone who shouldn't be running the meeting. Now you replace it, not with toxic positivity, not with fake affirmations you don't believe, but with truth, with evidence, with a stronger, more strategic voice that actually wants you to win. You ask, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is it based on facts or fear? Does it move me forward or keep me stuck? And then you choose a better board member, one that says, you're learning, you're growing, you've handled hard things before, you can handle this too. That voice doesn't promise perfection. It doesn't guarantee success. It just refuses to let fear run the show. This isn't about becoming delusional. It's about becoming deliberate. It's about recognizing that your mind is a tool, not a master. And like any tool, it needs to be used correctly. You wouldn't let a broken compass guide you through the wilderness, so why let a fearful, outdated thought pattern guide you through life? Here's what happens when you master this. You stop being reactive. You stop letting random thoughts dictate your mood, your confidence, your actions. You become the CEO of your own mind. You run the meeting. You decide which voices get airtime and which ones get escorted out of the building. Think about the people who seem unshakable, the ones who face rejection and keep going, the ones who hear criticism and don't crumble, the ones who try, fail, and try again without spiraling into self-doubt. They're not superhuman. They've just audited their inner boardroom. They've fired the voices that don't serve them, and they've installed better ones. You can do the same, starting today. Every time a thought pops up that undermines your discipline, your confidence, your progress, you pause. You audit it. You ask, who's speaking right now, and do they deserve a seat at this table? If the answer is no, you dismiss them, politely, firmly, without debate. And you replace that voice with someone better, someone who believes in your potential, someone who sees challenges as opportunities, someone who knows that failure is just feedback, not a verdict. That's the voice that deserves to run the meeting. Your inner boardroom is either working for you or against you. There's no neutral. Every thought is either building the future you want or reinforcing the past you're trying to escape. And the only person who can change the lineup is you. So take a seat at the head of the table. Listen to what's being said. Fire the voices that sabotage you. Promote the ones that push you forward. And watch how quickly your external life changes when your internal boardroom finally has the right leadership. The meeting is in session, and you're in charge.
Chapter 4. Neuroprogramming Discipline. Rewire your brain with daily repetition. Your brain is not fixed. It's not set in stone. It's not a permanent record of who you've always been. It's plastic, malleable, constantly rewiring itself based on what you do, think, and repeat. And right now, it's wired for your current habits, your current patterns, your current level of discipline. If you want to change, you don't need a new brain. You need to reprogram the one you have. Here's what most people don't understand. Discipline isn't a personality trait you're born with. It's not something some people have and others don't. It's a neural pathway, a connection in your brain that gets stronger every time you use it. And just like a muscle, the more you train it, the more automatic it becomes. Think about learning to drive. At first, it was overwhelming. You had to think about every movement, the mirrors, the pedals, the steering. Your brain was working overtime, building new connections, trying to process everything at once. But after weeks, months, years, it became automatic. You don't think about driving anymore. You just drive. Your brain wired itself for that behavior. Discipline works the same way. Right now, your brain is wired for whatever you've been doing repeatedly. If you've been hitting snooze every morning, there's a neural pathway for that. If you've been procrastinating on hard tasks, there's a pathway for that too. If you've been choosing comfort over effort, your brain has made that the default. Not because you're lazy, but because your brain is efficient. It automates whatever you do most often. This is where neuroprogramming changes everything. You're not trying to force yourself to be disciplined through sheer willpower. You're training your brain to make discipline the default. You're building new pathways, stronger pathways, pathways that make doing your right thing feel as automatic as brushing your teeth. Let's make this practical. Choose one behavior, one small, disciplined action you want to become automatic. Maybe it's working out every morning. Maybe it's reading for 20 minutes. Maybe it's sitting down to work without checking your phone first. Just one. Don't try to overhaul your entire life. That's not how the brain works. You build one pathway at a time. Now here's the key. You repeat it. Every single day. Same time, same trigger, same behavior. No exceptions. Not because you feel motivated, not because it's convenient, but because you're programming.
You're teaching your brain that this is what happens now. This is the new normal. The first few days are hard. Your brain resists. It wants to default back to the old pathway because that one's easier, more established, more familiar. But if you push through, if you repeat the behavior despite the resistance, something incredible happens. The new pathway starts to strengthen, and the old one starts to weaken. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, to form new connections and let old ones fade. And it happens faster than you think. Studies show that it takes about 66 days on average for a new behavior to become automatic. Not 21, that's a myth. 66 days of consistent repetition. That might sound like a long time, but think about it. 66 days from now, you could have a version of your brain that automatically does the thing you're currently struggling with. 66 days from now, discipline could feel effortless in that one area. Not because you became a different person, but because you built a different pathway. Here's the part most people miss. Consistency matters more than intensity. It's better to do 10 minutes every day than an hour once a week, because the brain doesn't care about effort. It cares about repetition. It cares about patterns. It cares about signals that say, this is important. This happens regularly. I should make this easier. Think about the people who seem naturally disciplined, the ones who work out every day without thinking about it, the ones who sit down and focus without battling distraction. They're not superhuman. They just programmed their brain differently. They built pathways so strong that the behavior became automatic, and you can do the same. But here's the warning. Your brain is programming itself whether you're intentional about it or not. Every time you hit snooze, you're strengthening the snooze pathway. Every time you choose distraction over focus, you're wiring your brain for distraction. Every time you quit when things get hard, you're building a quit pathway. You're always programming. The only question is, are you programming for the person you want to be or the person you're trying to leave behind? This is why daily repetition is non-negotiable. You're not just trying to accomplish something today. You're trying to rewire your brain so that tomorrow is easier, so that next week the behavior feels more natural, so that next month you're not fighting yourself anymore. Let's make this real. Tomorrow morning, you're going to repeat your chosen behavior. It's going to feel hard. Your brain is going to protest. It's going to offer every excuse. That's normal. That's the old pathway trying to survive. But you're going to do it anyway. Not perfectly, not enthusiastically, just consistently. And the next day, you'll do it again, and the day after that. By day 10, it'll feel slightly easier. By day 30, you'll start to notice the shift. By day 66, you won't even think about it. It'll just be what you do. That's neuroprogramming. That's how you build discipline that lasts. The brain you have today is the result of everything you've repeated up until now. The brain you'll have in 2 months is the result of what you choose to repeat starting today. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're just wired for the wrong behaviors, and you can rewire yourself one repetition at a time. So choose your behavior. Commit to 66 days. No negotiations, no exceptions. Not starting over because you missed one day. Just consistent daily repetition, and watch your brain transform into the most powerful tool you've ever owned. Discipline isn't about fighting yourself. It's about reprogramming yourself. And the code you write today becomes the operating system of your future.
Chapter 5. The Inner Commander. Replace negative self-talk with strong self-direction. There's a voice inside you that speaks when no one else is listening. It narrates your day, comments on your choices, judges your performance. And for most people, that voice is a disaster. It criticizes, it doubts, it replays your mistakes on an endless loop. It tells you you're not ready, not smart enough, not capable of the things you want to achieve. And if you heard someone else speaking to your best friend the way you speak to yourself, you'd tell them to stop immediately. But because it's your own voice, you let it continue. You think it's just the truth, just reality, just the way things are. It's not. It's self-talk, and self-talk is a skill you can master or a weapon you can use against yourself. The choice is yours. Here's what changes everything. You need an inner commander, not a critic, not a cheerleader, a commander. Someone who gives clear, direct, unemotional orders that move you forward. Someone who doesn't waste time with insults or excuses. Someone who simply directs you toward the next right action. Think about a military commander. When things go wrong, they don't spiral into self-pity. They don't stand around questioning whether they're good enough. They assess. They adjust. They give the next order. There's no drama, no emotional collapse, just clear direction and immediate execution. That's the voice you need to build. Not someone who coddles you, not someone who tears you down, but someone who leads you. Someone who sees the mission clearly and won't let emotions derail it. Someone who treats you like a capable soldier, not a fragile child. Let's look at the difference. Negative self-talk sounds like this. I can't believe I messed that up again. I'm so stupid. I always do this. Why do I even bother trying? I'm never going to get this right. That's not helpful. That's not motivating. That's just sabotage dressed up as honesty. The inner commander sounds different. That didn't work. Note what went wrong. Adjust. Try again. Next move is this. Execute now. No judgment, no spiraling, no wasted energy on things that don't matter. Just clear, actionable direction. Most people think they need to be nicer to themselves. They think positive affirmations will fix the problem, but affirmations without action are just noise. You don't need to tell yourself you're amazing. You need to direct yourself toward amazing actions. You don't need to feel confident. You need to command yourself to act as if you are. Here's how you build this voice. You start by catching the negative self-talk, not fighting it, not pretending it's not there, just noticing it. When you make a mistake and the voice starts spiraling, you pause. You recognize, that's not my commander, that's my inner critic, and critics don't lead successful missions. Then you replace it immediately with a command, not a judgment, not an analysis of your worthiness, a command. Okay, that happened. Learn from it, move to the next action. Do this now. Short, direct, focused on what's next, not what just happened. This isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about refusing to waste energy on commentary that doesn't move you forward. The inner commander doesn't care about your feelings in the moment. It cares about the mission, about the goal, about getting you from where you are to where you need to be. Think about the last time you failed at something. How long did you spend replaying it, analyzing it, beating yourself up over it? Hours? Days? What if instead you spent 5 minutes assessing what went wrong, made one adjustment, and moved on? That's what the inner commander does. It doesn't dwell. It directs. Here's the power of this shift. When you stop talking to yourself like a disappointed parent and start talking to yourself like a commander, you stop wasting emotional energy. You stop spiraling. You stop making small mistakes into evidence of your inadequacy. You just keep moving, keep adjusting, keep executing. And here's what happens over time. The inner commander becomes your default voice. The negative self-talk gets quieter, not because you're more confident, but because you've trained yourself to focus on action instead of analysis, on commands instead of criticism, on what's next instead of what just happened. Let's make this practical. Right now, think about something you recently failed at or struggled with. Notice the voice that shows up when you think about it. Is it critical? Is it harsh? Is it making you feel worse instead of better? That's the voice you're going to replace. Now, practice the inner commander response. Okay, that happened. Learn from it, move to the next action. Do this now. Short, direct, focused on what's next, not what just happened. Try it out loud if you need to. Train your brain to hear this new voice.
The inner commander doesn't promise you'll succeed. It doesn't guarantee things will be easy. It just refuses to let you quit. It refuses to let you spiral. It refuses to let one mistake become a referendum on your entire worth. It keeps you in the game, focused, moving, executing. And this is how discipline becomes sustainable, not through grinding willpower or forcing yourself to feel motivated, but through having a voice in your head that leads instead of sabotages, that directs instead of doubts, that commands instead of criticism. You're going to mess up. You're going to have bad days. You're going to face setbacks. That's guaranteed. But what's not guaranteed is how you talk to yourself when it happens. You can let the critic take over and spend days recovering from the emotional damage, or you can let the commander step in, give the next order, and keep moving forward. The voice in your head is the most influential voice you'll ever hear. It shapes your confidence, your resilience, your ability to keep going when things get hard. And right now, you get to choose. Will it be a commander or a critic? Build your inner commander. Train it. Strengthen it, and watch how quickly your life changes when the voice in your head finally starts working for you instead of against you. The mission is yours. The orders are clear. Now execute.
Chapter 6. Engineering Urgency. Use pressure and deadlines to kill procrastination. There's a reason you get more done the night before a deadline than you do in the 3 weeks leading up to it. It's not magic. It's not luck, it's pressure, and pressure is the most underrated tool for building discipline. Most people think procrastination is a character flaw. They think they're just bad at time management or naturally lazy. But procrastination isn't about laziness. It's about the absence of urgency. When there's no real consequence to waiting, your brain defaults to later, always later, because later is safer, easier, less demanding. But here's the truth. You don't need more time, you need more urgency. You need to engineer pressure into your life before life does it for you. Because the people who accomplish extraordinary things aren't the ones with endless time. They're the ones who know how to create artificial deadlines that force action. Think about how you work under real pressure. A project due tomorrow, a presentation in 2 hours, a deadline that actually matters. Suddenly, you focus, distractions disappear, you stop overthinking, you stop perfecting, you just execute. Why? Because your brain finally has a reason to act now instead of later. This is the secret. You can create that same pressure intentionally. You can engineer urgency into any goal, any task, any area of your life where you've been stuck in the slow lane. You don't wait for external pressure, you build it yourself. Here's how it works. Most people set vague goals with distant deadlines. I want to get in shape. I'll finish this project eventually. I should start that business someday. Those aren't goals. Those are wishes. And wishes don't create urgency. They create procrastination disguised as planning. Urgency requires specificity and proximity. Not, I'll get in shape, but I'm running a 5K in 8 weeks and I'm telling 3 people about it today. Not, I'll finish the project eventually, but I'm presenting this to my team on Friday, whether it's perfect or not. Not, I should start that business someday, but I'm launching a basic version in 30 days and collecting feedback from real customers. Notice the shift. Specificity forces clarity, proximity forces action, and accountability forces follow-through. When you engineer urgency, you're not lying to yourself. You're creating conditions where waiting has a cost. Let's make this real. Think about something you've been putting off. Maybe it's a big project. Maybe it's a difficult conversation. Maybe it's starting something new. Why haven't you done it yet? Be honest. It's probably because there's no real deadline, no real consequence to waiting another day, another week, another month. Now engineer urgency. Set a deadline that's close enough to scare you a little. Not impossible, but uncomfortable. Then add accountability. Tell someone. Post about it publicly.
Schedule the presentation before you're ready. Sign up for the event before you feel prepared. Create conditions where backing out is harder than following through. This isn't about stressing yourself out unnecessarily. It's about recognizing that without pressure, most people drift. They overthink, they perfect, they wait for the right moment that never comes. Pressure eliminates the drift. It forces you into action before you're ready. And action is where progress lives. Here's what most people miss. Urgency doesn't just speed up your work, it improves the quality of your decisions. When you have all the time in the world, you second-guess everything. You analyze every option. You try to predict every outcome. But under pressure, you trust your instincts. You make decisions fast. You commit. And often those fast decisions are better than the ones you labor over for weeks. Think about the last time you had to make a quick decision under pressure. Maybe it was on the spot in a meeting. Maybe it was during a crisis. Maybe it was when someone asked you a direct question and you had to answer immediately. How'd you do? Probably better than you expected, because pressure cuts through overthinking and forces clarity. You can use this intentionally. Instead of giving yourself 2 months to complete something, give yourself 2 weeks. Instead of planning indefinitely, plan for 3 days and then start. Instead of waiting until you're ready, set the deadline first and become ready on the way. This is how high performers operate. They don't wait for external pressure. They create it. They set tight deadlines. They make public commitments. They engineer conditions where procrastination is more painful than action. And then they let the pressure do what pressure does best: force execution. But here's the warning. Not all pressure is good pressure. The kind you engineer yourself, with clear deadlines and manageable stakes, builds discipline. The kind that comes from chronic avoidance and last-minute panic creates burnout. Know the difference. Strategic pressure is a tool. Chronic stress is a poison. So how do you engineer urgency without destroying yourself? You build in checkpoints. You break big deadlines into smaller ones. You create pressure that's challenging but not crushing. You set deadlines that push you but don't break you. And you honor those deadlines like they're real, because to your brain, they are. So let's make this your new system. For every goal, every project, every commitment, you set 3 things: a specific outcome, a close deadline, and public accountability. No vague intentions, no distant timelines, no private promises you can quietly abandon. Just clear targets with real consequences. And then you act. Not when you're ready, not when it's convenient, but when the deadline demands it. Because urgency doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It creates them. The life you want isn't going to appear because you thought about it long enough. It's going to appear because you forced yourself to act before you felt ready. Because you engineered pressure when everything felt too comfortable. Because you stopped waiting for urgency to find you and started building it yourself. So choose something today. Set a deadline that scares you a little. Tell someone who will hold you accountable. And then watch what happens when you stop giving yourself the option to wait.
Chapter 7. Embrace the friction. Choose effort over comfort to build mental toughness. Your brain has one primary job: keep you alive. Not happy, not successful, not fulfilled. Alive. And for most of human history, that meant conserving energy, avoiding danger, staying comfortable. That instinct served your ancestors well when survival meant not wasting calories on unnecessary effort. But in the modern world, that same instinct is killing your potential. Because comfort isn't making you stronger, it's making you weaker. Every time you choose the easy path, the convenient option, the route with the least resistance, you're training your brain that discomfort is dangerous, that effort is something to avoid, that the signal to stop is always right. And over time, your tolerance for difficulty shrinks, your capacity for hard things atrophies, until eventually even small challenges feel impossible.
Not because they are, but because you've spent so long avoiding friction that you've forgotten how to handle it. This is where everything changes. Mental toughness isn't built in comfort, it's built in friction. In the moments when every part of you wants to quit and you don't. In the spaces where effort feels unnecessary and you do it anyway. In the decisions where comfort is available and you choose the harder path because you know what it builds. Think about the last time something felt hard. Maybe it was waking up early. Maybe it was pushing through a workout. Maybe it was having a difficult conversation. What did your brain do? It offered a way out, a reason to stop, a justification for choosing comfort. And if you listened, if you took the exit, you didn't just avoid discomfort, you reinforced the pattern that says discomfort is something to fear. But here's the truth. Discomfort isn't damage, it's data. It's your brain signaling that you're outside your comfort zone, that you're growing, that you're in the exact place where transformation happens. And if you run from that signal every time it appears, you'll spend your entire life in the same small circle of easy decisions. Mental toughness is the ability to stay in the friction, to feel the discomfort and not make it mean something's wrong, to experience effort and not interpret it as a sign to quit, to face resistance and see it as the cost of becoming stronger, not evidence that you're on the wrong path. Let's make this practical. Today, you're going to face multiple moments of friction, small ones, a workout that feels hard, a task that requires focus, a conversation that feels awkward. In each moment, your brain will offer you an exit. It will tell you it's okay to skip it, to do it later, to choose the easier option. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can take the exit and reinforce the pattern of comfort seeking, or you can stay in the friction and build the pattern of mental toughness. The choice seems small, insignificant even, but it's not. Because every time you choose friction over comfort, you're teaching your brain a new lesson. Discomfort is safe. Effort is valuable. Resistance is where growth lives. This doesn't mean making everything harder for no reason. It means recognizing that easy isn't always better, that convenient isn't always right, that the path of least resistance usually leads to the person you've always been, not the person you're trying to become. Think about the people you admire, the ones who seem unbreakable, the ones who face challenges that would crush most people and somehow keep moving. They're not superhuman, they just have a different relationship with discomfort. They've spent so much time in the friction that it doesn't scare them anymore. It doesn't make them quit, it just makes them focus. You can build the same tolerance, not overnight, but through consistent exposure, through small decisions repeated daily, through choosing effort when comfort is available, through staying when quitting is easy. Here's the shift. Starting today, you actively seek friction, not in destructive ways, but in growth ways. You take the stairs instead of the elevator. You do the hard task first instead of last. You have the difficult conversation instead of avoiding it. You wake up early instead of sleeping in. Not because these things are inherently better, but because they build the muscle you need for bigger challenges. And here's what happens over time. The things that used to feel impossible start feeling manageable. The effort that used to drain you starts energizing you. The discomfort that used to send you running starts feeling normal. You don't become someone who doesn't feel friction. You become someone who doesn't let friction stop you. This is the difference between people who accomplish extraordinary things and people who talk about accomplishing them. The people who actually do it have built a tolerance for sustained discomfort. They can sit in the friction for hours, days, months, years without quitting. Not because they enjoy it, but because they've trained themselves to see it as part of the process, not a reason to stop. Let's make this your training ground. Every moment of friction today is an opportunity. Every time you feel resistance, you're at a fork in the road. One path leads back to comfort, back to the patterns that have kept you stuck. The other path leads through the friction, through the discomfort, toward the version of you that can handle bigger challenges. The choice is simple, but it's not easy, and that's the point. If it were easy, everyone would do it. If comfort built strength, everyone would be strong. But comfort doesn't build anything. It maintains, it preserves, it keeps you exactly where you are. Friction builds, it strengthens, it transforms. And the only way to access its power is to stop running from it. So today, when the discomfort comes, and it will, you don't take the exit. You don't justify quitting. You don't make it mean something's wrong. You just stay. You breathe. You keep moving. And you trust that the friction you're feeling is the price of becoming someone stronger. Mental toughness isn't a gift. It's not something you're born with. It's something you build, one uncomfortable moment at a time. One choice to stay when leaving is easier. One decision to embrace the friction instead of avoiding it. The comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. And you didn't come this far to stay the same. Choose the friction. Build the toughness. Become unbreakable.
Chapter 8. Future Casting Discipline. Beat impulses by seeing long-term consequences. Right now, in this moment, you have two brains competing for control. One is short-sighted, impulsive, obsessed with immediate pleasure and instant relief. It wants the donut, the extra hour of sleep, the Netflix binge, the scroll through social media. It lives entirely in the present and doesn't care about tomorrow. The other brain is strategic, patient, capable of seeing beyond the moment. It knows that the donut comes with regret, that the extra hour of sleep steals your morning, that the binge leaves you feeling hollow, that the scroll drains time you'll never get back. This brain sees consequences. It thinks in weeks, months, years. For most people, the first brain wins, not because it's smarter or stronger, but because it's louder. It speaks in feelings, in cravings, in immediate desires that feel urgent and real. And unless you have a system for letting the second brain speak, you'll spend your life making decisions your future self will regret. This is where future casting changes everything. It's the ability to pause in the moment of temptation and project forward, to see not just what you want right now, but what that decision creates later. To let your future self have a vote in the choices your present self is about to make. Think about the last time you made an impulsive decision you regretted. Maybe you stayed up too late. Maybe you skipped the workout. Maybe you said yes to something you should have declined. In that moment, it felt right. It felt justified. It felt like the only reasonable choice. But the next day or the next week, you looked back and thought, why did I do that? I knew better. You did know better, but knowing isn't enough. Your short-term brain doesn't care about knowing, it cares about feeling. And in the moment, the feeling of immediate pleasure is stronger than the abstract concept of future consequence, unless you learn to make the future feel real. Here's how future casting works. In the moment of temptation, you pause, just for 10 seconds, and you ask one question. If I make this choice, how will I feel in 4 hours, tomorrow morning, next week? You don't just think about it abstractly. You visualize it. You feel it. You let your future self speak. Let's make this real. You're about to skip your workout. Your short-term brain has 1,000 reasons why. You're tired. You're busy. You'll do it tomorrow. And in the moment, those reasons feel completely valid. But you pause. You future cast. You imagine yourself tonight having skipped it. How do you feel? Proud, energized, or disappointed in yourself? You imagine tomorrow morning. Did skipping today make tomorrow easier, or did it make the next workout harder to start? The answer is obvious, but only when you let your future self into the conversation. When you stay locked in the present moment, the short-term brain always wins. When you project forward, you give your strategic brain a chance to weigh in.
This isn't about guilt. It's not about shaming yourself into discipline. It's about making informed decisions, about letting the part of your brain that actually cares about your goals have a voice before the impulse takes over. It's about recognizing that the feeling of wanting something now isn't the same as it being good for you. Here's the power of this practice. Over time, future casting becomes automatic. You don't have to force it. You just naturally start seeing decisions in context. You stop making choices in isolation and start making them as part of a pattern, as part of a trajectory, as part of a future you're actively building or actively destroying. Think about compound interest. A small amount of money invested consistently over time becomes massive wealth, not because of any single deposit, but because of the pattern. The same principle applies to decisions. One skipped workout doesn't ruin you, but the pattern of skipping does. One late night doesn't destroy your discipline, but the pattern of choosing short-term comfort over long-term goals does. Future casting lets you see the pattern before it's built. It lets you recognize that this decision, the one you're about to make right now, isn't just about today. It's about reinforcing a pattern that will define your next month, your next year, your next decade. Let's talk about the opposite scenario. You're faced with something hard, something that requires effort, something your short-term brain wants to avoid. Maybe it's making a difficult phone call. Maybe it's starting a project you've been putting off. Maybe it's having a conversation you've been avoiding. Your short-term brain is screaming at you to wait, to do it later, to avoid the discomfort. But you future cast. You imagine yourself in 4 hours having done the hard thing. How do you feel? Relieved? Proud? Like you're finally making progress. You imagine yourself next week with that task behind you instead of still looming. You imagine the momentum that comes from doing hard things instead of avoiding them. And suddenly, the decision changes, not because the task got easier, but because you let your future self remind you why the discomfort is worth it, why the effort pays off, why short-term pain creates long-term gain. This is the discipline of projection, of seeing beyond the moment, of refusing to let your impulses hijack your trajectory. It's not about denying yourself pleasure. It's about choosing which pleasures actually serve you and which ones just feel good until they don't. Here's your practice. For the next week, every time you're faced with a temptation or a difficult choice, you pause for 10 seconds, you don't fight the feeling, you don't suppress the desire, you just future cast. You ask, how will I feel about this decision in 4 hours? Tomorrow? Next week? And you listen to the answer. You'll be amazed at how often the answer changes your choice. Not every time, but enough times to shift your trajectory. Enough times to build a pattern of decisions your future self will thank you for instead of resent you for. The people who seem to have incredible discipline aren't resisting temptation through sheer willpower. They're seeing what you're not seeing. They're future casting automatically. They're living with one eye on today and one eye on the person they're becoming. And that perspective changes everything. You're not just making a choice right now, you're building a future, one decision at a time, one moment of projection at a time, one choice to let your strategic brain speak before your impulsive brain decides. Your future self is watching. What will you choose?
Chapter 9. Essentialist Execution. Protect your focus by removing low-value tasks daily. You're drowning in tasks that don't matter. Right now, your to-do list is filled with things that feel urgent but aren't important. Things that keep you busy but don't move you forward. Things that give you the illusion of productivity while your real goals sit untouched, waiting for time you'll never find. This is the trap most people live in. They confuse motion with progress. They confuse busyness with achievement. They spend entire days checking boxes, answering emails, attending meetings, putting out fires, and then wonder why they're not getting closer to what actually matters. The problem isn't that you're not working hard enough. The problem is you're working on too many things that don't deserve your time.
And until you learn to ruthlessly eliminate the non-essential, you'll stay busy but stuck. This is where essentialist execution changes everything. It's not about doing more, it's about doing less, but better. It's about protecting your most valuable resource, your focus, by systematically removing everything that dilutes it. It's about recognizing that every yes to something trivial is a no to something transformational. Think about your day yesterday. How much of it was spent on tasks that genuinely moved you toward your biggest goals? How much was spent on things that felt necessary, but, if you're honest, could have been ignored, delegated, or eliminated? For most people, the ratio is terrifying. Maybe 10% of their time goes to high-value work. The other 90% goes to maintenance, distraction, and obligation. That ratio will never build the life you want. You can't outwork a focus problem. You can't be disciplined enough to make up for doing the wrong things. You need to cut aggressively, daily, without guilt. Here's the practice. Every morning, before you start working, you audit your task list. Not just glance at it, audit it. You ask one question for every single task. If I only accomplished one thing today, would this be it? If the answer is no, you question whether it needs to be done at all. Not later, not delegated, eliminated. Most people are terrified of this question because it exposes how much of their day is spent on things that don't matter, on tasks they've been carrying for weeks, on obligations they agreed to without thinking, on busy work that makes them feel productive but doesn't create results. But here's the truth. If something isn't essential, it's a distraction. And distractions don't just waste time. They steal focus. They drain energy. They create the feeling that you're always behind, always overwhelmed, always one step away from catching up. Not because you're not working hard enough, but because you're working on too many things that don't deserve your time. And until you learn to ruthlessly eliminate the non-essential, you'll stay busy but stuck. Let's talk about what essential actually means. Essential tasks are the ones that create disproportionate results, the ones that, if you do them well, make everything else easier or unnecessary, the ones that move you measurably closer to your biggest goals. Everything else is maintenance, obligation, or distraction. For most people, only 2 or 3 tasks per day are truly essential. Maybe one big project task, one relationship-building action, one health or growth activity. That's it. Everything else is noise. And if you're spending 8 hours a day on noise, it doesn't matter how disciplined you are. You're still going nowhere. Here's the shift. Starting today, you protect your essential tasks like your life depends on them, because it does. You do them first, before email, before meetings, before anything else can invade your day and steal your focus. You block time. You eliminate distractions. You treat these tasks as non-negotiable. And everything else, you question it, ruthlessly. Can this be eliminated? Can it be delegated? Can it be simplified? Can it be batched with other tasks? Can it be done later or not at all with real consequence? If the answer is yes to any of those, you act on it. You don't carry tasks just because they exist. You cut them because your focus is too valuable to waste. This sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest disciplines to master, because saying no feels uncomfortable. Eliminating tasks feels risky. Cutting obligations feels irresponsible. But here's the reality. Saying yes to everything is what's actually irresponsible. It's irresponsible to your goals, to your potential, to the person you're trying to become. Think about the people who accomplish extraordinary things. They're not busier than you. They're more selective. They say no to almost everything so they can say yes to the few things that matter. They don't try to do it all. They just do the essential things exceptionally well. And that's what creates results that look impossible to everyone else. Let's make this practical. Right now, look at your task list. Identify the 1 or 2 tasks that would genuinely move the needle if completed today. Circle them, protect them, schedule them for your peak energy hours. And then look at everything else. Be honest, how many of those tasks actually need to happen? How many are just habitual? How many are you doing because you've always done them, not because they're actually valuable? Cut half, right now, not later, not when you have more time, now. Because you'll never have more time, you'll just have more tasks. And if you don't learn to eliminate the non-essential, your life will be a constant battle between busyness and burnout. Here's what happens when you master this. You start finishing things that matter. You stop feeling overwhelmed because you're only carrying tasks that deserve your energy. You create space for deep work, for strategic thinking, for the kind of focus that produces breakthrough results. And you stop confusing activity with achievement. Essentialist execution isn't about working less. It's about working on the right things. It's about recognizing that your time and focus are finite, that every task you agree to is a bet on what matters most, and that most people are making terrible bets without even realizing it. So today, you audit, you eliminate, you protect, and you start building the discipline of focus, not by doing more, but by doing less, better, with ruthless clarity about what deserves your time and what doesn't. Because the life you want isn't built by doing everything. It's built by doing the essential things so well that everything else becomes irrelevant.
Chapter 10. Systems over feelings. Train yourself to act without waiting for motivation. Here's the lie you've been sold. You need to feel motivated before you act. You need to feel energized before you start. You need to feel inspired before you create. And because you believe this, you spend your life waiting for the right mood, the right moment, the right feeling that will finally make action feel easy. That feeling never comes, not consistently, not reliably, not in a way you can build a life on. Because motivation is an emotion, and emotions are weather. They come and go, they rise and fall. They show up when you don't need them and disappear when you do. And if you're waiting for motivation to act, you're putting your future in the hands of something completely unreliable. This is where systems destroy feelings, where discipline becomes automatic, where you stop needing to feel anything before you do what needs to be done. This is where you become truly unstoppable. Think about the last time you felt motivated. Maybe it was after watching an inspiring video. Maybe it was at the start of a new year. Maybe it was after a conversation that fired you up. You felt ready. You felt capable. You felt like you could finally do the thing you'd been putting off. And maybe you did. For a day, a week, until the feeling faded. And then you stopped because the system was never built, only the emotion. Here's the truth. Successful people aren't more motivated than you. They've just stopped relying on motivation. They've built systems that run whether they feel like it or not. Systems that make the right actions automatic. Systems that eliminate the need to decide, to debate, to wait for the right feeling. A system is a set of predetermined actions triggered by specific conditions, not by feelings, not by inspiration, by conditions. When X happens, I do Y. Every time. No exceptions, no negotiations, no waiting for motivation to show up and give permission. Let's make this real. Most people approach working out like this. I'll work out when I feel motivated. That's not a system. That's a wish. A system says, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 a.m., I work out. No matter how I feel, no matter what happened yesterday, no matter whether I'm motivated or exhausted, the alarm goes off, I move. That's the system. See the difference? One relies on an emotion that may or may not appear. The other relies on a trigger and a response. And over time, the system becomes so automatic that you stop thinking about it. You don't debate, you don't negotiate, you don't wait for feelings. You just execute, because that's what the system does. Here's the power of this approach. When you remove feelings from the equation, you remove the biggest obstacle to consistency. You stop being a slave to your mood. You stop making excuses based on how you feel. You stop waiting for conditions to be perfect. You just show up every time because the system demands it. This doesn't mean you become a robot. It doesn't mean you ignore your body or push through injury or burn yourself out. It means you stop letting temporary feelings dictate permanent outcomes. It means you recognize that feelings lie, that tiredness often disappears 5 minutes into the workout, that resistance fades once you start, that motivation follows action, not the other way around. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wait to feel motivated. You don't check your energy levels. You don't debate whether you're in the mood. You just do it. Why? Because it's a system, a habit so ingrained that it happens automatically. You can build the same automation for anything that matters. Here's how you start. You choose one behavior, one action you want to become non-negotiable. Maybe it's working out. Maybe it's writing. Maybe it's planning your day. Just one. And you attach it to a specific trigger, a time, a location, another habit, something concrete that happens consistently. Then you remove the decision. You don't ask yourself if you feel like doing it. You don't evaluate your motivation levels. You don't negotiate. When the trigger happens, you act immediately. No gap, no pause, no space for feelings to intervene. The system runs. You follow. The first few days, your feelings will protest. You'll feel tired. You'll feel resistant. You'll feel like skipping just this once. That's normal. That's the old pattern trying to survive. But you don't listen. You don't engage. You just follow the system. Because systems don't care about feelings. They just run. And here's what happens. After a week, it gets easier. After 2 weeks, it starts feeling normal. After a month, you don't think about it anymore. The system is running, and you're following it automatically. Not because you're motivated, but because the system has replaced the need for motivation. This is how you build a life that works. Not through constant inspiration, not through endless motivation, but through systems that make the right actions inevitable. Through removing the decision, through eliminating the space where feelings can sabotage you. Let's talk about what this looks like across your entire life. You have a system for your morning, for your work, for your health, for your relationships, for your growth. Each system has triggers and responses. Each system runs automatically. And because they're systems, they don't fail when you have a bad day. They don't stop when motivation disappears. They just keep running, and so do you. This is the difference between people who start strong and people who finish strong. Starters rely on motivation. Finishers rely on systems. Starters wait for inspiration. Finishers build processes. Starters make decisions based on feelings. Finishers make decisions based on predetermined commitments that run regardless of feelings. Here's your practice. Today, right now, you choose one behavior, one action you want to become automatic, and you design the system. You identify the trigger, the specific time or condition that will activate the behavior, then you commit. For 30 days, when that trigger happens, you act. No debate, no negotiation, no waiting for feelings, just execution. The first few days, your feelings will protest. You'll feel tired. You'll feel resistant. You'll feel like skipping just this once. That's normal. That's the old pattern trying to survive. But you don't listen. You don't engage. You just follow the system. Because systems don't care about feelings. They just run.
And here's what happens. After a week, it gets easier. After 2 weeks, it starts feeling normal. After a month, you don't think about it anymore. The system is running, and you're following it automatically. Not because you're motivated, but because the system has replaced the need for motivation. This is how you build a life that works. Not through constant inspiration, not through endless motivation, but through systems that make the right actions inevitable. Through removing the decision, through eliminating the space where feelings can sabotage you. Let's talk about what this looks like across your entire life. You have a system for your morning, for your work, for your health, for your relationships, for your growth. Each system has triggers and responses. Each system runs automatically. And because they're systems, they don't fail when you have a bad day. They don't stop when motivation disappears. They just keep running, and so do you. This is the difference between people who start strong and people who finish strong. Starters rely on motivation. Finishers rely on systems. Starters wait for inspiration. Finishers build processes. Starters make decisions based on feelings. Finishers make decisions based on predetermined commitments that run regardless of feelings. Here's your practice. Today, right now, you choose one behavior, one action you want to become automatic, and you design the system. You identify the trigger, the specific time or condition that will activate the behavior, then you commit. For 30 days, when that trigger happens, you act. No debate, no negotiation, no waiting for feelings, just execution. The first few days will be hard. The second week will be easier. By week 3, you'll start to feel the system taking over. By week 4, it'll feel strange not to do it. And that's when you've won. That's when discipline stops being a battle and starts being a system. You don't need more motivation. You need better systems. You don't need to feel inspired. You need to build processes that run when inspiration is nowhere to be found. You don't need to wait for the right feeling. You need to act despite the wrong ones. Because feelings are temporary, systems are permanent, and the life you want is built by people who stopped waiting for motivation and started building systems that make action inevitable. The system is ready. The only question is, will you run it?